All right, welcome to podcast 1.2. Now, if you recall from the last podcast we had, we talked about what was matter, the states of matter, and the changes that matter undergoes. And what we're going to move on to today are the properties of matter, as you can see right in here. Okay, and so we're going to look at a few things that we measure, and then we're going to get into some math that we do. And it's going to be your first real taste of chemistry math. So let's look at this. I've got a whole bunch of pictures here of different devices that measure volume. Now, you know this from way back when, but if I was going to ask you to define volume, you probably know from some other class that it has to deal with the space that an object occupies. The amount of space something takes up. There's all sorts of different definitions. The knob on your stereo, I don't know, something like that. But what I have here is a rather large, you can see this is a 1 cubic meter. There's a cubic decimeter and a cubic centimeter. Those are all varying volumes in a cubic measurement. What we have here are different devices. This is a graduated cylinder. This is a volumetric pipette. This is a burette. And this is a volumetric flask. All of those do exactly the same thing. They measure the volume of liquid, and they do it very accurately. All right, so that's one of our properties, volume. We're going to use that a lot. Two other properties that matter has that we're going to deal with a lot are mass and weight. Now, we've talked about mass a little bit before. I don't know if you know the definition of it, but I had mentioned in the last video that you can kind of think of them as the same thing. Well, technically they're different, and so we want to kind of make sure we know the difference. Now, mass is the quantity of matter in an object. And again, when we talk about the matter, okay, right there, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the atoms and the molecules, okay, that make up a substance. So all the atoms and molecules in a substance is its matter. All right, and so that's what mass is. Now, mass does not change regardless of where you are in the universe, right? So let's say I have 185 kilograms of mass on this planet. If I take that substance to the moon, I still have 185 kilograms of mass. However, weight is a little different. If you've ever seen pictures or videos of those guys that were on the moon, you saw that they weighed quite a bit less. And so the moon has 1/6 the gravity of Earth. And so on the moon, whatever you weigh on the Earth, you weigh 1/6 that. Because weight is the measure of the gravitational force on an object's mass. Okay? Now, we're all trying to lose weight, or at least a number of us are trying to lose weight. And it turns out what you're really trying to do is lose your mass. But it's important that you make the distinction between these two. Weight has to deal with gravity, all right? And mass is just the amount of matter. It doesn't matter if I take that mass anywhere in the universe, it's going to have the same value. However, the weight is directly due to the gravitational force. So you want to try and keep those two concepts separate, even though oftentimes we'll say weight and mass interchangeably, because if I want you to find the mass of, let's say, some kind of cube, then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and put it on a scale, a little electronic balance, and you're going to put that cube up there, and it's going to tell you. So we're going to weigh it the same way. So on Earth, mass and weight are going to be interchangeable. Okay, on to the next thing. Units. Holy moly. If there was any one topic that I am a stickler for, it's this thing right here, units. English teachers, history teachers, they really check spelling and punctuation and grammar. For me, when a unit isn't written or the wrong unit isn't written, it stands out like a misspelled word to an English teacher. So what is a unit? It's just a quantity adopted as a standard measurement. For example, you know how tall you are in feet, in inches. You know how much you weigh in pounds. You know the temperature outside in degrees Fahrenheit. Those things, inches, feet, pounds, degrees Fahrenheit, those are all units. It is the label that we give a value, and it's super important that you understand that you always have to write a unit with a number. For example, if someone goes, hey, how far is it from here to the store? And I go, well, it's 10. What are you going to do? You have no idea what I'm talking about. Is it 10 miles? Is it 10 kilometers? Is it 10 blocks? Is it 10 yards? There's all sorts of things that you could do. So we've got to know exactly what you're talking about, and you do that by labeling all numbers with a unit. And it's super important. Now, some of the units that we use are going to be familiar to you because we've been using the metric system for a lot of years. We haven't ever converted over to it, but we still use it in science all the time. So there's some ones down here you might recognize. For example, you might recognize kilo, like a kilogram. If you're into computers, you will have recognized mega, as in megabytes and gigabytes. We're even starting to have some hard drives that are terabytes, and you can see the value of there. All right. You've definitely come across centimeters, millimeters. Okay. The micro stuff you probably haven't seen unless you've looked at medicine or vitamins, and you know you might have seen that sometimes. Okay. And then the other ones aren't very common. Now, if you look at what we're doing over here, we've got all these different measurements and the units that we're going to use. Kilogram, time is in the seconds, okay, and so on. Current, we're not going to really use that this year. Temperature, look at that, Kelvin. You're going, wait a minute, I've never heard of that. I know Celsius and I know Fahrenheit. Well, we'll talk about the Kelvin temperature a little bit later. The amount of substance is a mole. You'll learn about that. And we're not going to really learn about this. So those are the basic units we have. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to kind of convert between these units, because that's going to be a big portion of how we do math in chemistry. And this is kind of chemistry math, and this is your first